Let's go. Hey everybody out there in the Facebook world, and wanted to thank you all for joining us here at the end of towards the end of the day. My name is Celia Israel. I'm one of your state representatives here in Travis County. We're excited to bring another topic forward that I know is at the top of everybody's mind, and that is how are kids doing now? How are kids doing in the summer? And what do we have to look forward to in September? So our office has arranged some really smart people to help us be thoughtful about this. And really appreciate all of you guys who are teachers and professional kind and the suddenly teacher kind who have been figuring this out. Just a quick aside. We can find we've done a few of these past videos on our Facebook page about a number of different things, domestic violence and things of that nature. So let me introduce the folks that we have here today. Thank you all for being here. We have, and if you guys will wave, that way our audience will know who's who. Ami Cortes Castillo is AISD Director of Early Childhood Education. Katy Escandell is the interim AISD Director of Academics. Mandy Estes is the Round Rock Chief of Technology and Learning. And Margo Vogelpohl is the Round Rock ISD Director of Title I and Pre-K programs. So that's a lot of experience that we've got put together this afternoon. Thank you all very much. Let's get started and talk about the dilemma that children and parents and families face. Always has been the summer slide, but now it's a COVID slide, and in a COVID world, we'll do a round robin on this section and just ask you guys to each talk about what is the COVID slide, what are the impacts to kids and to their families, and just because you're at the bottom left, Mandy, let's start with you, and then we'll go clockwise. So Mandy, you start us off.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So the COVID slide is a term that plays on the summer slide that we in education have frequently referred to throughout the years. But now we know that this summer slide will be longer than typical because we have not had in-person school since spring break, essentially, since mid-March. And so I think when you think about the COVID slide for us in the summer, we know that generally speaking, every student's going to experience some level of slide, some more than others, and that means academic loss. Most kids, generally speaking, when they return to us in the fall, can quickly mitigate that slide once they get back into school, get back on the school routines. And so for most students, we're able to recoup that summer learning loss fairly quickly. The difference with this year will be that the summer, or essentially the time that kids have been completely away from face-to-face instruction, will be almost twice as long as what it typically is. And so we are in education anticipating a much greater slide this year, in particular for some of our students and families who may have differing experiences or differing access to educational resources within their homes.
Yeah. Margo, you want to add to that and introduce yourself too?
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Margo Vogelpohl, Round Rock ISD. I would second everything that Mandy said. I think with the group that I represent, being early childhood, one of the things that we worry about is, of course, their social and emotional development. It's that excitement with young children. They're ready to start school, and the fact that we're pushing that back a little bit could affect them, in a way that we have to be ready for. So I think one of the biggest things or goals for us as school district personnel is wanting to ensure that our kids still love learning, no matter what age they are, right? So there will be some summer slide there, and we definitely need to keep that learning going on over the summer, but it's important for kids to continue to love learning and not hate school when they're not in school. So so that's what we're going to be doing, and we're ready to welcome our kids when they come back.
Well, Amy, I know some young children in my life are missing their teachers, and the teachers are missing their little ones. So Tell us what this COVID slide means from your perspective. You're also early childhood.
Yes, yes. Like Margo said, we have, there's a big emphasis in early childhood on social and emotional development and learning, and young children, as all children do, but especially those young learners coming into their classrooms for the very first time, really make a good, strong connection with their teachers. And so, to address some of that, our teachers have been doing a really great job of connecting with their students in many different ways to keep those relationships strong. Just today, we were able to see a video of one of our teachers and doing some mindfulness breathing with the students on a lesson. So that was really nice to see, taking those 3 deep breaths, as we all do. We all need to do, children and adults, when we feel stress. And so that was a really nice thing for that teacher to do. And I think that those kinds of things are something that we'll continue to need to do, because we recognize that, families need to feel safe. Families need to get their needs met in order to continue learning. And so that's one of the things, with the COVID slide, that we and going into next year, that we have a strong recognition that we need to tend to the social emotional learning of all the students, and especially our young learners who are walking into schools for that very first time, and have, recognizing that this situation has caused stress and trauma for some families, kind of the unknowns and things like that. So just taking that into consideration as we plan our summer programming, we want to take social emotional learning to be kind of at the forefront, knowing that we need that before we can, continue on with our academic learning, recognizing that it's important to address those, that slide and possible gaps that students may have in their learning. So we are really working hard to do both.
Katy, what does it mean in your world at AISD, interim director of academics? That's a big title. It's a big district. What are your thoughts on this topic?
I think that definitely, we're talking a lot about our littles, but I was thinking about our big kids who kind of hit that snooze button a little bit early, if you will. I know there are some high schoolers out there who are definitely struggling to keep it going for the next 7 days. We know that it's also, we've seen a big change and shift in the way that we've been developing and delivering our curriculum lately. We had to jump directly to virtual, and that was also sort of very strange for a lot of our kids, even though they had experienced some blended learning in the classroom. The last 9 weeks of school have been a big shift in the way that we are teaching and the way that we're learning. So I know that there are some kids out there who are set up for this. They had the technology ready to go. They had the Wi-Fi ready to go. They even had the knowledge of what to do with all of that technology ready to go. But for some of our kids, that wasn't the case. And so just like Mandy said, we're going to have some very vulnerable students who are going to have been out of school for going on, 5 months. And that's a big time for them to be away from us. It's a big time for them to be sort of minimally engaged in learning. I know also a big shout out to our parents who right now are doing the heavy lifting of our teachers, right? I myself, even though I'm working in a school district, I am also a mother, and so I'm trying to keep my 2nd grader on point so that she's ready for 3rd grade when she goes back to school, which she asks me every day when that's going to happen. So I know that our kids out there really miss their classrooms, they miss their friends, they miss socializing. And I really, really hope that when they come back to us, again, that we can accelerate and compact that learning for them to minimize the long-term effect of sort of this whole epidemic, right?
It's I know it's a trite phrase by now because we've never been through this before, but there's so many. You were talking, Amy, about the trauma that some kids have experienced. Maybe they almost lost mom or dad, or one, income, money coming in the household isn't what it was. So they're thrown off, and the stressors are elevated already. So let me talk about some of the resources and what should people be thinking about for as we drift into the summer. And I know we always have high expectations, right, about being structured and organized, and I'm going to read all these books. And, I was hoping that, and I'll leave this open and have you guys just give us a conversation about what are some resources that we could be looking at and utilizing.
I'd love to share a few resources. I would start off, of course, with the Texas Education Agency. They have resources out there for families to continue the learning. And of course, we look at those resources as well. I would urge families to continue to look at their district's websites, right? We've worked really hard to ensure that all of our curriculum is up to date, that there's ideas for interaction, community events as well. So not just, book and pencils, but that learning happens every day in all sorts of different experiences, right? And so again, going back to trying to continue that love of learning, to try to build learning into when kids don't realize they are learning, right? So, sorting laundry and doing everyday things and just having conversations with kids so that you know how they're feeling. In addition to that, I know I can speak on behalf of Round Rock. We also have different, a Pinterest page that we have going. We connect with our families through, of course, all social media. And then a lot of our vendors and instructional resources providers that we work with on a yearly basis are also putting together free resources. So, people that we work with every day that provide our instructional resources to campuses are also doing their due diligence to offer free instructional resources to families. So I think the resources are out there. It's just, trying to find what best fits a family. And then if for some reason you're not able as a family to find those resources, making that connection with the school district, because we are here to help and our teachers are still, even though we are heading into summer, our summer will look really different. And I probably can speak for Amy and Katy and of course, Mandy, that all of our teachers, though summer is coming, we are not taking the summer off because we are here for our kids and their families.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will just extend a little bit, absolutely, on what Margo said. We've heard from some of our parents, too, that kids are a little bit tired of screen time. For some of our older kids, that might be hard to imagine as they tend to like their screens. But so along with the resources, and Margo referred to this, then what may be really important for some of our kids is some safe experiences outside the home as well. And we know the summer will look different. We may not be able to do all the things that we would have done before, but kids can still take a walk in their neighborhood. They can turn over rocks and observe real life science. They can go to a park. They can draw, write, perhaps visit some local sites, perhaps take a road trip, whatever they can do safely to explore the environment outside their home and pick up some of those rich background experiences that will also benefit them.
Yeah, and as far as the virtual learning goes, I mean, I do think that, again, I agree with Margo. A lot of our partners that we've worked with throughout this entire process are going to continue to stay open, if you will. So the students in our district can continue to connect, work on their skills virtually, sharpen those things academically. And I would find that balance, again, like Mandy said, between engaging in the real world as safely as possible, going out and being outside, being physical, moving your body. I have to remember to do that myself. It definitely helps me clear my mind and think better when I get up and walk around the block. But also connecting with your friends. I think about older kids and how they've missed so much time, to socialize with one another. And, that's just so important to even the developing brain of a middle schooler. We talk about little kids and their developing brains, but middle schoolers' brains are definitely still developing. And I think about the social interactions that they might be able to safely do, talking to their friends on devices, being able to connect that way, again, really taking care of their emotional and social well-being. That's going to help them be ready to come back to possibly more virtual learning or a mixture of virtual learning. Because, I do hear of that fatigue. I also think about the kids who are working. Some of our older kids, I heard about a student who, like you said, Rep, the father lost his position. And so that student marched right out and went and got a full-time job at HEB. because HEB was hiring.
We've had a lot of those situations in our school district as well, even with students who are attending some of our more affluent schools. So I think one of the things too, as educators, is that when kids come back, we have to be careful about the assumptions we make about how much or how little COVID might have impacted them.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a question I'm going to throw out there to you guys, because when I was, I guess one of my my greatest memories when I was, middle school was being able to go to the library and grab as many books as I could. And first, my parents were not anything beyond high school. My dad was 6th grade education, but for somehow I got a love of reading at a young age, and I was like hungry for books. Of course, now books are the libraries are virtual, and get a card and you can go online. But I'm wondering how is it like my concern is for that kid that isn't quite at the reading level that they should be, and without a goal, without the structure, I don't want them to slide backwards. I want them to say, okay, well, the summer is an opportunity where I can kind of pick up some slack. And am I being too simple in that view? Because I think I get the outdoor thing. I want people to have a diversity, but I also want I want people to have a love of the written word.
Right.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think that having kids, our kids, I know we spend a lot of time talking about, selecting text that's right for you, finding that just right book, being able to move into that zone of finding something that's a little bit challenging, but something that's not overwhelming and makes you hate the book.
Yeah.
Right. I talked to, when I was a teacher myself, I talked to my kids about that a lot. It's like, if you get through the first couple of pages and it's frustrating you, I don't care how much you want to read that book, you're just not going to get to. So put it down and pick something else. I think about, are there going to be places as we open up, as Texas opens up? I have questions about whether or not our libraries might be able to be accessible. What are some procedures that they might put in place? So as our kids are moving into summer and our families are moving into summer, I urge them to, continue to watch, see what opens, see where they can find those opportunities to connect with the community and find resources like actual books. Because as she said before, we're getting a little sick of screens.
Yeah, and Katie, I'd love to add also that, we definitely want them to try to find books and things, but at some families may not be able to. And so I would encourage reading anything. Opening the pantry, there's things you can read there. If you watch television, right, you can put the captions on. That's one of the easiest ways to kind of like encourage fluency so that they can read and go along and follow along. You could read just anything around the house can be read. And then for parents, you don't have to pull a small reading group. We don't expect that. But I think just talking to them, like, what did you see? What did you feel? What do you think is going to happen? And nowadays you could do that pretty much with anything electronic. You can do that with any material found in the home. So absolutely, I think you just need kind of a balance. And I think during this time, we need to be a little creative at times with whatever resources we have at hand. But that way we can keep our kids reading, right? And enjoying it. Because I think the biggest thing for me, as I think of our kids, and we miss them terribly, is just knowing that they love learning, right? That they continue to have a love for school and that they continue to miss us and come ready to go whenever that should be and in whatever form or fashion. We don't want it to be such a chore that we're on kids, 8, 9, 10 hours a day and having them sit and do schoolwork, if you will, because really learning happens all the time just by talking to them, by having conversations and exploring the environment. So I think I want to make sure that, we as families, I'm a mom as well, I have a senior. So Katie, I definitely understand, trying to finish strong. And I got a middle schooler going into high school. So it's all that, but I also don't want them to go back to school upset or hating it. I really want them to understand that we learn every single day. Every single day we learn. And there's some things, though, we've lost some things because of this. We've had huge conversations in my house about some of the things we've gained, right? I would never have had this time with my senior if we had not had COVID, right? So we are eating dinner together, we're watching shows together, we're having conversations, and there's some things that I've learned along the way during this time about myself and my kids that I probably wouldn't have learned if we hadn't had this break. So
Yeah, well said.
I agree with what you're saying, Margo. And I think one of the things that we kind of recognized here at the end is, and hopefully parents can do in the summer, is kind of just some of those like life skills, that students can practice. And so that's one of the things we did put in our at-home learning site for our early childhood students is, learn your address, learn your phone number, learn, sort the laundry. And so just doing those things that you can do at home with your family are really important. And like you said, those are some things that as a family, we've also been able to enjoy. I said, I think we've eaten dinner as a family together more in this, it was like 4 weeks ago in those 4 weeks than we had, pretty much since January. So I think that, that's been something, a silver lining. But I do also want to say that I do recognize that not all families have the same, resources available. And so we will continue to provide, meals this summer is one of the things for our, that will be available for our families. And we will continue to provide some summer learning activities through the school district. Starting with in June, it'll be our summer school. It'll be at home learning. So again, we're kind of balancing out the virtual and the in-person. But this will be a virtual asynchronous learning experiences for kinder and pre-K students who are ELL. So that'll start off our summer programming, and we will continue to have options and offerings for families that do want to connect with us over the summer. And I do want to also give a shout out to PBS a little bit, because they do have programming on their station that's free for families, and all across Texas. They did collaborate with TEA on this, and on our at-home learning website, and I'm sure Round Rock has too, we've highlighted some of their schedules, and they have some question cards available that families can use for just what Margo was saying, just having conversations about even the TV shows that you're watching together. There's a lot of rich vocabulary in there that supports young learners, and I want to just kind of put that out there as well as a resource that's available for folks that have a TV. So.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think TEA, like all of us, scrambled initially, and you certainly can't blame them for that, but they have stood up some learning materials, instructional resources for 8 weeks of summer learning that parents can access digitally. And they're colorful, they have real text, they have links to sites that are free for parents to use. And so that's another great resource for parents who are wanting digital books and other resources to keep learning going. And it is by grade level. So every student at any grade can access those.
Well, thanks for that. If anybody's watching and has questions, feel free to chip them in. And we have one more little section that we wanted to cover, and that is this fall. And this fall, we hope the slide hasn't been too bad. Teachers are ready to take the pitch, because that's what you do. You're professionals, and you pick up the slack and you figure things out for these families and their kids. What can we expect in the summer when we hopefully go back to in-person classroom learning? And I'll just open that up for those of you guys who patch in.
Well, I think one of the things is when kids return in the fall for in-person learning, we'll want to quickly get a gauge of what their learning loss has or has not been. We are working in Round Rock to revamp our curriculum so that content that was covered in the spring while students were at home can be readdressed in the fall very quickly when students return. Our mindset is that even though we did push out instruction and supported our families with that, we have to go into that work in the fall, assuming that none of that was learned. Fortunately, I'm sure in Austin it's the same there. Most of our curriculum and the more difficult concepts are taught earlier in the year. That allows our teachers to continue to spiral back and review that content in the spring as students are entering the time of taking the end of course assessments, STAR, AP exams, etc. And so when COVID hit, if there was a good time for this spike to occur, it would have been in the spring when we're entering that time of spiral review for the content. But we know we're going to have to go back and reassess and reteach materials that were covered this.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, I mean, Mandy, you're absolutely right. You know, I'm sure every school district out there is making a list of everything that was missed. Sorry, there's an airplane flying over me. I don't know if y'all can hear me. But no, we are doing the very same thing. We are looking at how are we going to compact our curriculum, because we will come back in the fall, but we will not get extra days of school. So we somehow have to fit 6 weeks of learning from the spring into our regular 53 weeks of learning that we have during the school year. So we're really looking at what does that look like for teachers? What does that look like for students? You know, how can teachers go deeper when introducing concepts to make sure they're scooping up those prerequisite skills that may not be there? We are instituting a deep dive into formative assessment, which is going to be the way that a teacher looks at a student's learning and the student looks at their own learning on a daily basis, almost an hourly basis, and really thinks about where they are and where they need to be, you know, and what can they do to close that gap that may be, you know, preventing them from mastery. One of the other exciting things that we're talking about in our district right now is moving to a model of mastery learning, you know, really looking at, you know, how can we do this in a standards-based way as we try to be flexible, because we know that we may be coming back face-to-face, we may be coming back virtually. Who knows what will happen in the winter? Our health experts are definitely going to keep us informed. And so as educational experts, we need to remain flexible about how we can assess our students if they end up having to go back home again.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the expectations are going to be high, that there's a lot of making up to do.
Yeah. One of the great things is that kids are resilient, and we do have some children who are very, very, you know, I don't know how to say this. They're, you know, they've been through a lot, and they've already been through a lot before this happened. Yeah. You know, and those kids are going to be at the top of our mind always, especially when we're trying to think about how we design. You know, our underserved kids, our most vulnerable kids, you know, they're on the forefront of what we're trying to plan and do. I know that, you know, I will take my own children again as an example. I'm not very worried about my child. I think when she gets back to school, she's going to be just fine. She was a little ahead. Maybe now she'll be right on target. But we do have some children who, you know, when spring break came, they were a grade level behind already.
Yeah.
Now they're a little further behind. And so we are definitely thinking very deeply about how we're going to help those children accelerate and regain what they've already lost.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I'd like to just say that I want to put families' minds at ease. I want them to understand that this is what we do, right? This is the work we do. This is, it's an honor to do it, and we love what we do. And so I think to close it out, I want families to know, and kids that may be watching to know that we're going to be ready, and that we can't wait for them to be back within our buildings in whatever form or fashion. And when they do come back, whether it's virtually or through our doors, we're going to be ready for them, and we can't wait to see them.
Yeah, well said.
We miss you.
Yeah, it's really sweet to see the real affection that's there. Like we really do miss you. It's a sincere on both sides to see the kids who miss their classmates and their teacher. We've been through a lot. The kids and families have been through a lot. We are in an upside down world right now. Kudos to you guys and your colleagues who moved as swiftly and as professionally as you could to a distance learning environment just like that. You know, like no pressure.
No pressure.
But you guys did the best you could with the tools that you had. I've seen a lot of creativity. As an outsider, my dogs are dumb as dirt and never going to amount to anything. But I have a huge respect for our teaching professionals, and I know that they are going to do the best they can. So let's hope that our families and kids are being their best selves too this summer. Let's have the best back to school ever in September. I hope it's in person, and we'll continue to post some resources. And you guys have given us a lot to think about. And I appreciate y'all very much for the time that you've given us, for your professionalism and your own love of learning as well. And thank you all for joining us. And you guys stay safe. Have a dynamic summer. I hope you become masters of learning and get your Jedi stripes on learning. And, as I say, every book is an adventure, and I hope that you guys are doing your best to be your strongest selves. So it's not that simple. It's not easy, but there's resources there for you. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.